Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Ezra Walker, and if you're hearing this, it's because I finally decided it was time. Time to stop pretending. Time to stop swallowing the bitterness like it wasn't poisoning me from the inside out. I'm 33 years old. I live on a modest farm just outside Ames, Iowa. I grow corn, soybeans, and hope. Not the kind of hope that floats. The kind that gets trampled, buried, and somehow still grows back, stronger. You wouldn't know it looking at me, dirt under my nails, tan lines on my neck, but I built something out here. Quietly. Patiently. Not just a farm, but a revolution in agriculture, Walker Agritech. A tech company that started in a rusted-out toolshed, now partnered with universities and international NGOs. I never told my family. Not because I wanted to keep it a secret. But because they never listened. My parents, Evelyn and James Walker, they're polished. That's the word. Perfect lawn. Perfect house. Perfect friends. And, of course, the perfect son, my younger brother, Lucas. Lucas works on Wall Street. Drives a Tesla. Posts pictures from rooftop parties in Manhattan. He's the walking embodiment of everything my parents ever wanted. When I told them at 18 that I was going to major in agricultural engineering, you'd have thought I told them I'd joined a cult. A farmer, Ezra, my mother scoffed. You got a scholarship and you're going to waste it on soil? Dad just shook his head. You'll regret this, he said. Farms don't build futures. Finance does. Lucas smirked from across the table and said, guess one of us is going to need a trust fund. They laughed. I didn't. Over the years, I stopped trying to prove anything to them. I built my life quietly, far from their dinner parties and country clubs. I met Lila during a volunteer education drive. She was a teacher from Omaha, the kind of woman who could calm a storm with a look and start one with a word. She believed in what I was doing long before I had the words to explain it. We got engaged under the oak tree in the south field. That moment felt like a promise, that maybe, just maybe, I could finally be seen. The wedding was simple. Held in our backyard beneath strings of lights and wide-open skies. I wore a suit that didn't quite fit right. Lila looked like the embodiment of grace in a lace dress that caught every sunset ray. We wanted peace. We wanted family. Instead, I got humiliation. It started during the reception. Lucas grabbed the mic for his best man speech. I thought, naively, that maybe this once, he'd surprise me. Maybe he'd show he had more than charm and arrogance under his designer blazer. Everyone raise a glass, he said, already grinning. To my brother Ezra, the man who gave up stocks for stalks. Who left behind civilization for cow dung. Who chose a hoe over a hedge fund. People chuckled nervously. He may not have a 401k, but hey, he's got corn. And Lila, bless you for signing up to be queen of the cornfield. Laughter. Real laughter. My mother dabbed her eyes from laughing too hard. My father clinked his glass with pride. I stood there, hands clenched, staring at the people who were supposed to protect me, mock me instead. Lila reached under the table, gently taking my hand. Breathe, she whispered. You don't owe them a thing. But that's when it hit me. They'd never see me as enough. Not unless I wore a suit like Lucas. Not unless I fit their narrative. To them, I was just the lowly farmer. And to them, that would always mean I was less. But that night, something changed. I didn't cry. I didn't explode. I started planning. Not revenge for revenge's sake. But justice. Because sometimes the best revenge is showing them everything they never thought you could be, right in front of their eyes. And letting it burn. The morning after the wedding, I sat alone in the barn, the smell of hay and oil thick in the air, my tie still hanging around my neck like a noose I hadn't bothered to untie. Lila came in with 2 mugs of coffee. She didn't say anything. Just sat beside me, leaned her head on my shoulder, and let me fall apart in silence. I should have known, I whispered eventually. I should have known they'd turn my day into a joke. Lila rubbed my back gently. You hoped they'd change. That's not weakness, Ezra. That's love. But sometimes, love just isn't enough. That hit me hard. Because deep down, I still wanted their approval. Like a kid holding up a drawing to parents too busy to look. A week later, we received a wedding card in the mail. It was from my parents. No note. Just a check, made out to Lila, with the words, "For something better," scribbled in the memo line. Something better. I stared at that phrase until the letters blurred. That's what I was to them. A mistake they hoped Lila could still undo. A wrong turn she might someday regret. She tore up the check and threw the pieces in the fireplace without a word. But I wasn't okay. Not really. The farm started to feel smaller. Like it was shrinking around me. Every visit from a supplier or partner came with the same questions. Why aren't you in a real lab? You're the guy running that startup from a toolshed. Even some of the local farmers, guys I thought were on my side, started getting distant once Carter AgTech began to gain traction. I overheard one of them say at the diner, "Ezra's not one of us anymore. He's playing at being Silicon Valley with a pitchfork." It was like I didn't belong in either world. Too smart for the farmers. Too dirty for the tech crowd. Too small for my parents. Too real for their fantasy. And the thing is, I almost believed them. There were nights I'd lie in bed beside Lila, pretending to be asleep while my mind raced with questions. Was I a joke? Was I just some stubborn fool clinging to dirt while the rest of the world passed me by? Was I wasting Lila's life too? But every time I started to sink, she'd pull me back. You're not the soil, Ezra, she whispered one night, resting her hand on my chest. You're the seed. You've just been planted deeper than most. I held on to that. But even so, the weight kept piling on. The system I'd spent 2 years building, the soil sensors, the auto-irrigation prototypes, had started to fail in our test fields. One by one, units glitched. The crops yellowed. The software lagged. I lost a key client in Colorado who called me too amateur to scale. And then the bank called. Turns out the loan I took to build phase 2 of Carter AgTech was backed by collateral I didn't realize Lila had signed off on, the house. Our house. I didn't cry when I heard that. I just nodded and said, "Okay," and walked outside. I didn't tell Lila for 2 days. I didn't sleep either. When I finally did tell her, I couldn't even look her in the eye. But she just cupped my face and said, "Then we fight. Together. Like we always have." I don't know what I did to deserve her. But I knew I wasn't going to let her down. And yet. Just a few weeks later, I got the message that made everything unravel. A tech blog had written a brutal review of my company after a leaked internal pitch deck surfaced online. They called it, "Overambitious Farmboy Delusion," mocking everything from my logo to my distribution model. My inbox was flooded with emails, investors pulling out, partners going silent. I sat at my desk in the barn-turned office, rereading the review until it felt burned into my skull. Then my phone pinged. A message from an unknown number. Funny how the farmer's dream dies when someone tells the truth, huh? You never belonged. Go dig. No name. But I knew who it was. Lucas. I could feel it. The tone, the spite, it had his fingerprints all over it. That night, I collapsed. Not just physically. My belief in myself, in my work, in my worth, it cracked like brittle ice. I stayed in the barn long after midnight, curled up against the wall, cold coffee untouched beside me. I stared at the computer screen, blinking cursor on a resignation letter I couldn't bring myself to finish. I thought I was done. But just before dawn, Lila came in. She didn't say a word. She just picked up the mouse, closed the resignation draft, and opened a spreadsheet with my irrigation system projections. "Start again," she said. "If they tore you down, build higher." I stared at her, confused, hollow. And she added one sentence I'll never forget. "They think they buried you, Ezra. But they didn't know you were a seed." That moment was my turning point. I wasn't broken. I was buried. And it was time to grow back, stronger, deeper, and unstoppable. It had been 3 weeks since the anonymous message. 3 weeks since the blog article turned my life into a joke for a tech world I never asked to be part of. And yet, every morning, I still walked the fields. Still turned the soil. Still checked the moisture sensors, even though some were broken. It was routine, but it was also armor. Something about touching the earth kept me from falling apart completely. Lila, God bless her, kept me sane. She kept showing up, not just with coffee and pep talks, but with action. She called old clients, sent out follow-up emails, even organized a local farmers' day to demo our remaining tech. She refused to let my dream die. But I still didn't have answers. How did my private pitch deck leak? How did that blog writer know about my failed prototypes and faulty distribution deals? That wasn't public knowledge. Only a few people had access to that internal file. My business partner, Nate. A coder from Chicago I brought in to help scale the analytics software. Our freelance graphic designer. And Lucas. See, a few months earlier, in a moment of weakness, or hope, I had emailed my younger brother a version of our pitch deck. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd be impressed enough to finally see me as more than just a dirt-covered joke. I even asked him if he had contacts who could introduce me to investors. He never responded. Now, I couldn't ignore the timeline. A week after I sent him the deck, the first strange inquiries started showing up in my inbox. Sketchy venture capital firms, vague questions about legitimacy, even one VC who said my brother had warned them I was not ready for prime time. I wanted to scream. But I needed proof. So, I called in a favor. Jake. A college friend who'd become a forensic tech consultant in Chicago. He knew about Lucas, knew about the family dynamics, and more importantly, he knew how to dig. I forwarded him the leaked blog article, the anonymous message, and the pitch deck I sent Lucas months ago. "Give me a few days," Jake said. "I'll let you know what I find." Those few days crawled. I buried myself in work. Repaired sensor nodes. Updated firmware. Rewrote code for the crop yield tracker, not because anyone was waiting, but because I had to believe I still mattered. Then, Jake called. And what he told me made my blood run cold. "Ezra, the file that got leaked. It was your pitch deck. Same metadata, same timestamps, same internal formatting." "Okay," I said, my voice already tightening, "but can we prove who sent it?" Jake sighed. I traced the blog submission portal. The IP address matches a financial services firm in Manhattan, where Lucas works. Not definitive, but strong enough to raise eyebrows. I leaned against the barn wall, my knees weak. "Ezra," Jake's voice softened. "It gets worse. I also checked the investor calls you logged around that time. At least 3 of them were intercepted. Someone reached out to those firms right after your emails went out, warning them off you. I didn't even need to ask who. Lucas. My own brother. He didn't just sabotage me. He actively tried to ruin me. The blog post. The leaked file. The poisoned investor wells. All of it, his work. Not because I wronged him, not because he needed to, but because he couldn't stand the idea of me becoming something bigger than he believed I ever could. I sat down on the dirt floor of the barn, the phone still pressed to my ear. Jake said one more thing before hanging up. "Ezra, you've got him. What you do next, that's on you." I didn't sleep that night. Lila sat beside me at the kitchen table, her hand on mine, her voice calm. "You know what this means, right?" she said. I nodded. "It means I was never crazy. It means they all laughed while he lit the fire behind me." She looked at me, really looked. "And it means now," she said, her voice steel beneath silk, "you decide if this is where it ends, or where it begins." That's when I knew. This wasn't the end. This was just the start. Of something bigger. Of something earned. Of something they would never forget. It was time to stop waiting for justice, and start designing it. I've never been a vengeful man. But when someone poisons your life, your dreams, and your name, and does it with a smile, you either let it break you, or you break the silence. I chose the latter. The day after Jake confirmed what I already knew deep in my gut, I stood in front of the old map nailed to the barn wall, the one where I'd plotted out the future of Walker Agritech. Except now, the future looked different. It wasn't just about sustainable systems or crop yields anymore. It was about truth. Exposure. Payback. But not the petty kind. No, what I wanted, what I needed, was the kind of justice that made people stop and think twice before ever calling someone like me a lowly farmer again. I turned to Lila. "I'm going to ruin him." She looked up from the kitchen table where she was sorting out bills and proposals. She didn't flinch. Didn't raise an eyebrow. Instead, she said softly, "Just make sure it's the truth that does it, not your anger." And she was right. Because revenge with lies is just a cycle. But revenge with truth? That's a reckoning. So I got to work. Step 1, gather the receipts. I recompiled every single email, timestamp, and forwarded investor message from the week after I sent Lucas the pitch deck. With Jake's help, I backed up server logs and metadata proving the file was accessed from Lucas's office IP. Even better, Jake had screen captures of a fake Gmail address tied to Lucas's name submitting my deck to the tech blog. Sloppy. Then came the financial trail. A contact at the same California winery, the one Lucas had nearly scared off, sent me a forwarded voicemail. It was Lucas, pretending to be a concerned associate, warning them that Walker Agritech's founder had a tendency to overpromise and underdeliver. He signed off with, "Just looking out for your bottom line. LW." Clear as day. Step 2, control the timing. I didn't want to act out of rage. That's what Lucas would do. No, I needed my moment to land exactly where it would hurt. Lucas was scheduled to speak at an investor summit in Des Moines in 2 weeks. A local event, but high profile, full of the types of people who once clinked glasses with my parents and ignored me at family barbecues. He was going to be the keynote speaker. How to recognize and avoid bad investments. The irony made me laugh so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. That would be the day. But before I exposed him publicly, I had one more thing to do. Step 3, give my parents the chance they never gave me. I invited them to the farm. No agenda. No accusations. I just wanted to see if, when presented with the truth, they'd finally acknowledge the son they'd spent their lives dismissing. They came reluctantly. Mom wore pearls and heels even though she was walking through mud. Dad brought a bottle of wine, as if he was coming to a dinner party, not the place he'd called a waste of potential, for a decade. We sat on the porch. Lila brought out iced tea. Jacob played in the yard, his laughter floating through the air. And then I showed them. Not just the company's growth. But the impact. The irrigation system now used by drought-stricken regions in Sudan. The software helping small farmers in South Texas double their yields. The federal grant we'd received from the Department of Agriculture to expand our work across 6 states. Mom stared at the papers in stunned silence. Dad finally said, "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I held his gaze. "Because you weren't listening." Then I showed them the final folder. Jake's report. The email metadata. The sabotage. The voice messages. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father sat back like someone had punched him in the gut. "Lucas, did this?" he muttered. I didn't nod. I didn't gloat. I just stood up, folded the folder shut, and said, "You raised a golden boy who tried to burn down his brother's life just to keep being your favorite. And you let him." They didn't speak. But they didn't deny it either. As they left, my mom turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Ezra," she said. "What are you going to do?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "I'm going to plant the truth." The day of the investor summit arrived cloaked in early autumn chill. Leaves fell like warnings as I buttoned my jacket, packed my briefcase, and kissed Lila goodbye. She cupped my face and looked into my eyes the same way she did the night she said yes under that oak tree. "You sure about this?" she asked. "I'm not here to humiliate him," I said. "I'm here to reclaim the truth. And maybe a little bit of myself." She smiled faintly. "Then say what you've been holding in for 30 years. I nodded, stepped into our dusty truck, and headed into the lion's den. The summit was held at a glass-walled business center in Des Moines, polished marble floors, fruit-infused water, everyone with perfectly combed hair and curated smiles. I wore a pressed button-down and my work boots. I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't the forgotten son. I was the man who built something out of nothing. The main ballroom was packed. I recognized half the faces. Men and women who once scoffed when my name came up at family events. The ones who asked, "How's the tractor life treating you?" while bragging about hedge funds and country club memberships. Lucas was already on stage, glowing in a tailored suit. The screen behind him flashed his name in bold white letters, "Lucas Walker, how to avoid losing it all." God, the irony. He spoke with charm. With practiced ease. With the smugness of a man who thought no one knew what he'd buried in his past. But I did. When the Q&A session opened, I stood up. Lucas froze for a microsecond, then pasted on that politician smile. "Yes, you there, sir in the back." I stepped forward, slow and steady, voice calm, mic in hand. "My name is Ezra Walker. I'm an agricultural engineer and founder of Walker Agritech, a company you may remember, Lucas." Murmurs rippled across the room. Lucas's eyes flicked side to side. "Sure," he said, cautious. "Ezra's my brother. He runs a farm tech startup out in Ames. We're very proud of him." Polite applause. I raised the microphone again. "Funny. Because last year, you told one of my biggest clients I was unreliable. Said my startup was a bad investment. You emailed them under a false name and tried to tank my deal." Silence. Lucas shifted. "I think there's been some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I interrupted. "I have call recordings. IP address matches. And a full digital forensic report." I turned to the projector technician and handed him a USB stick. "Mind pulling up the file labeled, fraudulent activity?" "It's been cleared by legal." A minute later, the screen behind Lucas shifted from his portfolio to a slide showing his exact email, his fake alias, and time-stamped correspondence to clients and the tech blog that humiliated me. Gasps. A few people even stood. Lucas's face drained of color. This isn't, I can explain," he stammered, hands gesturing wildly. "You tried to ruin your own brother's company," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "Not because I wronged you. But because my success threatened the story you told everyone else, that I was the family disappointment." That only you mattered. The moderator stepped in, clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Walker, we'll need to take a break. I turned to the audience one last time. My name is Ezra Walker. I may have mud on my boots, but I've never tried to destroy someone else's future to protect my pride. I build things. I grow things. And unlike some people here, I don't lie to climb ladders. Then I walked out. Past the shocked investors. Past the men who once dismissed me. Past my father, yes, he was there, in the back row, eyes wide with horror. I didn't need to stay. The truth had been planted. And from the look on their faces, it was already blooming. By the time I got back to the truck, my phone had already exploded. Emails. Calls. Messages. People I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered I existed. Most of them didn't apologize, they congratulated me. Like my revenge was some viral TED Talk and not the slow burn of 30 years of pain finally catching flame. I drove back to the farm in silence, wind slipping through the cracked window, the gravel humming beneath the tires. But inside me, nothing felt triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt emptied. Lila was waiting on the porch, arms folded, hair braided back, her eyes scanning my face as I pulled up. I climbed out of the truck and dropped into her arms like I'd just come home from war. I did it, I whispered into her shoulder. I know, she whispered back. I watched the live stream. I froze. What? She pulled back, smiling just slightly. The summit had a digital feed. One of your old clients shared the link with me. I stared at her, stunned. So you saw. Every word, she said. And Ezra. I've never been prouder of you. We went inside, sat on the couch with our hands tangled like vines. I finally allowed myself to breathe again. That night, the video went viral, at least locally. Irrigation innovator exposes his own brother in live showdown, was the headline that spread like wildfire. The media loved it. Investors even more. 2 major agri-tech firms reached out for partnerships. One of the universities that had dropped out of a trial pilot came crawling back. Even the California winery, the one Lucas had nearly scared off, sent me a gift basket with a note. We believed in you then. We believe in you now. Let's grow together. But the real twist didn't come until 4 days later. I was in the barn with Jacob in my lap, showing him how to connect soil sensors, even though he was more interested in trying to eat the wiring, when Lila came in holding a thick white envelope. This came certified, she said. From Des Moines. I opened it. And froze. It was a legal notice. From Lucas. He was suing me. Defamation. Emotional distress. Career sabotage. I read it twice. 3 times. My hands trembled, not from fear, but fury. Is he serious? Lila said, snatching the letter and scanning it. After everything he did, he wants to paint himself the victim. Apparently, yes. Lucas's fall from grace had been fast and brutal. His firm dropped him within 48 hours of the summit. Former clients cut ties. Even our parents, according to Jake, had asked him to leave their apartment after he screamed at Mom for not defending him. Now he wanted to drag me down with him. But the thing about suing someone with receipts, you don't get very far. Jake and my lawyer built a counter case so strong it read like a Netflix thriller. Every email. Every forged message. The recorded voicemail from the California winery. It was ironclad. We didn't just defend against Lucas's claims. We filed a counter-lawsuit. Corporate sabotage. Defamation. Interference with business contracts. The kind of suit that didn't just destroy reputations. It ended careers. When Lucas's lawyer saw our file, he went silent. Within a week, they offered to drop the case entirely, in exchange for me dropping mine. But I didn't. Because the twist wasn't over yet. While digging for more documentation, Jake uncovered something none of us expected. A fraudulent fund. Lucas hadn't just sabotaged me. He'd been lying to investors, too. Inflating numbers, forging reports, making it look like he had clients when he didn't. He used part of our parents' retirement savings to cover up shortfalls in quarterly reports at his firm. He wasn't just guilty of betrayal. He was guilty of financial fraud. Jake turned the evidence over to the authorities. 3 weeks later, Lucas was arrested in his apartment for white-collar fraud, wire fraud, and investor deception. He was indicted. His mugshot hit the evening news. I didn't cheer. I didn't post anything. I sat with Lila on the porch, Jacob asleep in her arms, and let the breeze move through us like a quiet exhale. I didn't plan for this, I said. No, she replied. But you planted truth. And it grew all the same. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard. It's been a year since Lucas's arrest. A year since the courtroom echo faded, and the dust of betrayal finally settled. People ask me sometimes if I feel like I won. If taking down my brother, the family's golden boy, the man who stood on stages and looked down on me my whole life, felt good. Here's the truth, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like closing a book I never wanted to read in the first place. But what came after, that's where the real story began. Walker Agri-Tech is thriving. We've expanded into 6 countries, supporting small farmers with real tools and real tech, making agriculture sustainable, accessible, and modern. My irrigation system has helped communities survive the worst droughts in decades. I travel sometimes, speak at conferences. But I always come home to the same porch, the same field, the same laughter of a boy named Jacob who's turning 2 next month. Sarah, my heart, my anchor, is now head of community development for our company. She organizes education programs for farming families and schools, bringing the next generation into the fold. She still paints, too. Our living room is filled with canvases, sunsets over soil, rows of green stretching into gold. As for my parents, well, they changed. Maybe not completely. But something softened in them. The night Lucas was sentenced, for years, with a chance for parole, they showed up at my door. No demands. No fake smiles. Just 2 aging people with tired eyes. My father spoke first. Voice low. Almost ashamed. I believed the wrong son, he said. And I paid the price. We all did. Then he handed me something. A box. Inside, every childhood photo of me they ever took. From first steps in muddy boots to high school science fairs. I never even knew they'd kept them. I thought we'd lost you, my mother whispered. But I think we just didn't know how to see you. I didn't say anything. Just nodded, invited them in, and made tea. And that night, for the first time in my life, we talked as equals. They visit now. Not often. But enough. They help in the garden. Read to Jacob. Sometimes I catch my father staring at me with an expression I don't recognize, pride. And Lucas? We don't speak. He sends letters from prison. Most go unopened. But one I did read. It didn't apologize. It didn't explain. It just said, I never thought you'd grow into someone worth envying. And that's when I realized. This was never about revenge. It was about growing. Becoming. Standing in the field after the fire and choosing to plant again. They buried me. They laughed at me. But I wasn't done. I was a seed. And now, I'm in full bloom.